regardless of the job, man.
All right, people of the internet, my name is Dur Jagero and this is Dialogues with Jagero. Today I am talking with Innocent Omondi. I have always wanted to know what happens in other countries when you have migrated there. Yeah. And Omondi now lives in America, born in Kenya. And I know a lot of people around the world are wondering what is it like living in America as a non-American, so to speak.
Right.
So thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you for having me, Jagero.
This feels weird again.
It is. Take two, man. Twice is always good.
I remember knowing you. We have known each other online. It's amazing how people can know each other in the online space for a long time without meeting face to face.
That's true.
So now now I can see you face to face.
Yes.
Which is amazing. How is the United States taking you?
United States is treating us well. We are able to make a living out of it. And I know when we started earlier, I introduced myself as Innocent Mbogo.
Yes.
Omondi Ayako. I love to use a full range of my names.
Those are four.
A full range of my names, yeah.
Those are four names.
Yes.
All right, fair enough. So when we starting this interview, I want us to look at where you grew up in.
Yes.
You told me that you grew up in Eldoret. How many were you in the family? Are you in the family?
We are a family of 7. Originally, we were 8 siblings, but we are 7 now. My eldest brother Samuel passed away years back, but we are a family of 7. Yeah.
Okay. When living in, you told me that you were born in Chiranganyi Hills.
Yes.
In just close in Kitale, right?
Yes.
How was life like when you were growing up? What was your family doing? What do you remember about that life, going to school?
Yeah. So my earliest life was in Kitale, and my parents didn't get to live there too long, so I don't have the most fondest, not fondest, but I don't have quite a big memory of it. But we shortly after that we moved to Eldoret. My dad was the general manager of KFA back then.
What is KFA?
Kenya's Farmers Association, I think.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And at that time they were in charge of cereal boards, all kinds of things. So he was the head of it all the way throughout Rift Valley, I think. So it was a good living. Had a large farm. I remember we lived in a pretty exclusive neighborhood in the suburb at that time. But shortly after that, he stopped working there and pursued business and moved to Eldoret.
What business was he doing, remember?
Yes, my dad was in the paint industry. Paint making industry. Yeah, it's very interesting. He was also an owner of a bakery at some point. So he was a true hustler, for lack of a better word, a true hustler from the beginning. And he was a trained manager by profession, but he also was a businessman at heart. Yeah.
Okay. So you live Chiranganyi Hills in Kitale and then go to Eldoret where you stay for another several years?
Yes. My earlier life now is based in Eldoret at that time, and I go to primary school in St. Patrick's Primary School, and until I finish my class 8. Then from there on, then we moved to Nyanza, where I went to my high school. Yes.
Migori Boys.
Migori Boys.
How was it like?
Migori was an interesting place. It was an eye opener. Ideally, it was a good school. It was actually a mixed day school.
Mixed day.
It was mixed. Yeah, it was boarding and mixed. So it was very interesting. There was an in and out of this school. But I do remember that one of the reasons why I went there was because I needed to have some discipline. My parents felt like I probably needed to be in boarding school, learn a few things, and most importantly, also learn the culture and the ways. So it seemed like everybody in my family, when they went from class 1 to class 8, then we went to high school in Nyanza. So it was a way to kind of instill a little bit of who you are, learn who you are, learn to be a man, but at the same time learn your language and your people. So I'm very grateful for having.
It's interesting that they usually do that to Luo boys or girls to go to Luo schools and learn so that they can learn the language. But then when you go to that school, they also don't want you to speak that language.
Yeah.
So how was that happening for you?
Yeah, you spoke languages when the disc was not around or when the teachers were not around. I don't know if you remember a disc.
Yes.
Yes. If that thing was not around, you spoke your language, whichever one you liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In our school, they used to just have it during the day, but they wouldn't have it in the evening, maybe after class time.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Were you guys having it the whole time in the boarding school, in the dormitory?
I think we were having the whole time, but I think generally the rule of the disc was that you were going to give it to somebody who you thought you could give it to. There are some people you could not give it to. So it didn't matter when time was. So you could pass your disc safely elsewhere. But so it didn't go to everybody. So, yeah. So,
how was it like for you, living in Lowland in Migori and having come from a very... But I think the weather is a bit sort of the same, the Eldoret weather and Migori.
Yes, Migori is very temperate. It's a bit cold. It's really nice. It's probably, I don't know if people know this, but it's one of the colder counties in Nyanza, I think. We have a lot of trees there. It's a bit hilly. It's very leafy and green too. So the weather was not different. What was so different was that I came to a school from a very pampered environment back at home, living with family, my mom and dad taking care of us, to living with full-grown men. Some of them were married at that time. So that was a major, major cultural shock. And I actually remember my first 2 years.
You mean some of your schoolmates were married?
Yes. Remember we had a guy called Ojala. Pardon me if you're still there, sir. But the man was married. He was from Gwasi. He was a big man with a thunderous voice, and he looked as scary as it can be. Yeah.
And he was in high school but married.
Yes, with beards like mine and yours.
Wow.
Yes. And he went home every Friday and came back on Mondays.
He was in a boarding school.
It didn't matter, yes, because he lived in Gwasi in Migori. That's like 3 or 4 hours. A trip, I think, by that time. But he went home because he had a wife and children in the weekend sometimes. Yeah, he was just a man among us boys. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you finish high school and you finish your high school and you decide to... How do you end up at now Kenya Polytechnic, called TUK?
Yeah, Initially, I wanted to go to law school. That's really what I wanted to do. And I never got a chance to go. There was grading scale, and I never passed enough for that. But I knew I wanted to do something to do with law. So I did environmental studies, which is kind of just the science and the art of environment. So I went to Kenya Polytechnic at that time. And part of the reason why I went there is because I wanted to go to a school very quickly and finish and give a diploma or whatever it was to my dad, because he had insisted that I was not going to leave the country without a degree. That was just a thing we agreed with, Finish school, then you can do whatever these other things you're doing. So Kenya Polytechnic seemed to be an easier way for me to go in, finish a quick degree. It was actually an associate degree at that time, and giving back the papers. Here it is. I'm ready to go.
It's interesting that a lot of people today are reading for their parents or educating themselves for their parents. Like they take engineering classes, but they say, that's not where I want to go. They're doing it for their parents.
That's true.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Doing things, because I'm just thinking, you had the opportunity to say no and go for what you wanted. Why did you decide that, okay, let me do this for my parents?
Yeah. First of all, I'm an African child. We are our children's. We are our parents' children, for sure. I don't think we get a lot of degree of freedom until much, much later in life. So you don't want to disobey your parents. You also want to not disobey your uncles and the larger family. So if you are supposed to do one thing, That's what you're supposed to do until that time where you can kind of figure out your way out. But a lot of people, not just here, in the whole continent, and I even think abroad, that generation has been a generation where people do things for their parents. You know, there's a saying here in the Luo community, it is there, it's in the Nigerian community, it's in the Indian community. If you're not a doctor, if you're not a lawyer, and you're not an engineer, you're not doing anything. So it's the same thing in Luos, it's the same thing in the Nigerian community, same thing probably in larger Kenyan and even in Indians. So it's a thing.
That is interesting but right now we know a lot of Nigerian parents whose kids are doing really well in music.
Yes.
And they're starting to change that and saying, well, you just don't need to be a doctor.
Exactly.
Even in Luoland, people like Eric Omondi, people like Jalango, all these guys, they never got any degrees, so to speak. But now they are doing well, and even the doctors themselves, even the engineers are like, we love what is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true, and part of the reason or how I got to travel was that I was a multifaceted person. I was pretty good in academics, but at the same time, I had passions and I had things that I truly enjoyed. And part of those things were what got me out of this country. So it's probably important for nowadays parents to be able to try and be as balanced as possible. Look at your child and recognize any other talents that they may have, recognize any other passions, and try and nurture them as a whole. I guess the society is getting smaller in that sense. And it's becoming a thing now, just like you've mentioned. Scholarly work is good, but it's not necessarily where your bread will come from.
Yeah, exactly. So you told me that when we were talking before that you had always wanted to be a model or an actor. Where were you picking this from? As myself, I grew up in the village, and I think looking at the TV and the actors and actresses, I thought like that's a life that is well out there, out of my reach. I wanted to be a journalist, I wanted to be a writer, and that is ultimately what I became.
Yes.
But then where did you pick this from that you wanted to be an actor? Where was this coming from?
It's interesting. So ever since I was a young person, I seemed to like to entertain, even when I was really young. My maternal grandmother would come visit, and she would just say, hey, she called me Jabondo. Hey, Jabondo, come and dance for me. So I always liked to dance. So I think from an earlier age, I liked the idea of either telling story through rhythm or through words or through action. So it started at a very early age. I didn't notice it until much later after I was in high school. Then I took some drama classes, and I was pretty good in acting. So back of my mind, I figured out it's something that I didn't think I would make a living out of it, but I knew it's something that I enjoyed doing, that I was very free when I was doing it, and I noticed that I was good at it. It was very hard to go tell your father, hey, Dad, I want to be an actor. My family is a family of lawyers, engineers, and all kinds of people, So that was a challenging thing. But I started doing it, and I had a mother who was a lot more idealistic like me, and she probably would look at me and just say, okay, you're going to do those things? Yeah, I did. I had an uncle, late uncle, may his soul rest in peace. His name was Sam, and he was very encouraging. So whenever he saw something that he thought was spectacular about me, he always encouraged it. So it's very important for us to encourage things in our kids at a very early age. If you see something that a kid is doing well, support it. As long as it doesn't take him way off the path. So that's how I started that. But to answer your question directly, there's a guy called Edward Quach. He's a media personality in a sense. You might know him.
I think he was in radio at some point.
He was in radio. A great big voice. If you ever spoke with him, you'll hear big voice guy. So there was a commercial for beer that was taking place, and Edward Quach did a casting generally, and he saw me, and he said, hey, would you like to come and do an interview, or rather an audition for a small part, the movie, or an extra? So that's the first time I got exposed to truly not only the act of acting, but the whole idea of being able to be in front of cameras and doing things. So really, my first break came from there. And from there onwards, it was either I was modeling, I was shooting commercials, or trying to do some parts of extra work, maybe in acting and things like that. So that's how it started.
You finished with Kenya Polytechnic. You have your associate degree. You were telling me that you get this opportunity to model. How did that happen? This American organization came to Kenya, or how did it happen?
They did. There was, I think, for the first time, the Mr. Kenya had organized, Miss Kenya, I think, had organized a simultaneous modeling thing where for the first time they were having the male side. Modeling in Kenya for men was non-existent completely. It was not even something people would think about. So for the first time they were doing it, I think it was organized by Dr. Nyamu or something. Some big people were involved in it. They started this thing, and when I sat down and looked at what they were offering, I didn't like what they were offering, because the women who was going to be Miss Kenya was going to get a car, they were going to get some perks. But for men, they gave us a TV, and at that time, flat screen TV had come into the country. It was a big thing. They said, "Oh wow, you're gonna get a flat screen TV?" And I said, "No, I don't like that." So I pulled out literally a day before the show, and I was like, "No, I can't do this." And I went to my Ushago. So there was a lot of half and puffs in the industry about it, because people thought that I would do well that time, but I really didn't care about being a pageant person. I really cared about being an actor, number one, and maybe a model, number two. So it wasn't a hard thing for me to decide that, hey, I didn't feel like I'm being compensated well. And at that time, I put my foot down and say no. So it was from that particular hula balu that came about that somebody kind of noticed that, wow, that guy is, okay, maybe he really believes in himself. Maybe in the process of all this, somebody saw that this guy truly believed in him, and somebody recommended me to this American Modeling Talent Convention, and that's how I knew about it.
So they came here to headhunt, or what were they doing exactly?
Exactly. They came here to headhunt. They were looking. If you notice, East Africa generally has really good female models. Great. I mean, Kenya is full of them. It's a country of beautiful people, to be honest. But it's not known for beautiful men. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Or men that could be short. But we are known for a lot of things. But I've never had them say, hey, this is a model from Kenya. But somebody saw me. But there was a lot of young talent then. People were not looking. There were a lot of young talent, people who were very capable. If you looked at magazines, we were being inspired then by people like Tyson Beckford, Tyrese Gibson, African-American models at that time. But you could see a lot of them walking the streets here. But just, it was not even an idea for them. You told them, nobody cared. I just happened to have seen them, and somebody told me, hey, you can do this. And just people encouraging me. Literally, that is how I started.
So the story begins. How does it? How do they contact you? Do you contact them? How does it happen?
Oh yeah. So they had a modeling and talent convention in Village Market. They called all actors and models from East Africa, Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, and people came. It was over 2,000 people, and they modeled. The people showed different outfits, things, but they were just looking for a particular look. And there are people who were doing very well in the Kenyan industry, but they were not the international like criteria that those people. They were just looking for something very specific. It's not necessary. You would not even know what it is, but I happened to be what they were looking for. Me alongside 2 or 3 other people. 2 people, I think, Michelle Cuthbert and Mercy Ruthari. And we got the opportunity to go and show our talents in American Millie Lewis Talent Association in the US. Yes.
We're talking about your journey to the US and how you went to the embassy. Yeah. It was a very interesting conversation right there. That is 2001.
Yes.
Just before the
yeah, that's 2001, before September 11th happened. So I actually went to the embassy much earlier. I think maybe earlier parts of 2001, but I didn't get to leave the country until July. So I had my visa for a long time. I was just sitting on it. But yes, it was just before September 11th happened.
Tell me a little bit about that story of going to the US.
It's a story that I've told so many times, because it's a story that really encapsulates things that I've done throughout my life. I always say that I'm a lucky person. I always say that I'm somebody who goes with good feeling. If I have a good feeling about something, I put all my foot and weight in it. So this particular day, I'd gone to the embassy, we had already had a day to go and do an interview. So went there, we were on the line. My best friend had come with me, and he was waiting for me outside the gate.
He wasn't thinking of going to the US himself.
He was, but he just didn't have his process together that time. In my case,
because he had not been picked by that
exactly.
by the talent
exactly.
outfit.
Exactly. So for him, it could have been a different way. Maybe it could have been through a relative, through school, whatever. But he did want to come. But that was just not his day. So he accompanied me, and he waited for me. But I went on that line, and I just looked. I remember distinctively that day. It like literally caught my mind. Walking in, I remember seeing a Marine who was maybe on my right, and on the left side there were windows. There were like 3 windows. I remember on those 3 windows, one person in there in particular was somebody of Asian descent, kind of like Asian, Chinese-looking type of person. Don't know if that's correct to say.
Yeah.
But yes, when I went there, I looked at those windows, and I could tell who was going to interview me based on how many people were in front. And I looked there, and the way the guy's demeanor just didn't sit well with me. So I walked, and when it was my time for him to lift his head, I just made a U-turn and left. So I went, and my friend was asking me, "Hey, what did you do?"
That was fast.
Yes, well, I was fast. I was like, "No, man, I just don't know. I just didn't feel right." So fast forward, we go home that day. We're in a cab. We're in a matatu. It's very quiet. I'm quiet. I'm just like, wow, did I blow it? But we got home, and I picked the phone, and I called. And those days, if you were to have an interview scheduled, it would take you 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6 months scheduled. So that short was it. But I got lucky again, and I made a call, and somebody picked at the embassy. And they say, "Yeah, we have an opening tomorrow in the evening. Would you like to come?" Like in the afternoon. I say, "Yeah, sure." So the next day when I went and I was in the line, same clothes, same everything. And I looked at the windows again, and I felt really good. I just had great energy that day.
The Asian person wasn't there?
I don't even remember seeing him. Yeah, I don't remember seeing him. But what I do remember is walking straight up, and there was a woman, an elderly woman, or a motherly woman. And I went, and we started talking, and I said hello, and she was like, "Oh, wow, this is a little different." Because most of the time, as you know, and as I've had you allude, people are very timid in these interview processes.
The embassies are full of bad feelings.
Yeah, they're torturous in many ways. The torture of the spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I was full of energy and pomp, and she was like, "Well, what is with this young fella?" So anyway, we started having a conversation back and forth. What are you doing? I told her these things, and she was very, very positive. She received me very well. She was very forthcoming with any information that was needed. She asked me good questions, and at the end of it, I don't even remember finances being an issue. It was just an interaction between 2 people, and maybe somebody who realized there's a young man with a lot of hope and optimism, and he's going towards his dream. And she actually wished me the best and gave me a visa. The difference, it was a 5-day visa. But
was it 5-day or... But the visa was longer. It was 5 years, but 5 days.
Yes.
But you needed to be in the United States for 5 days.
Yes.
But the visa is 5 years.
Exactly. So which means after 5 days, you had to exit.
Yeah.
Yes. So you're right. It was a visa for 5 years, but you could come in and out several times. But within 5 days, you had to have left and come back again. Yeah.
I don't remember how they put that in the system. Is it written in the passport? No, it's not.
So, they stamped your passport, and then there was a small thing, a small number, a small piece of paper that they stamped the back of it and would tell exactly when you're leaving. It was just a small sheet of paper, I remember, and it would be stapled on your passport.
Okay, yeah. Okay. As a caveat for you've been given 5 years, but
it's 5 years, but in this particular entry, is an entry for 5 days.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So, do you remember the first time that you fly to the United States? The first time you were flying in a plane, right?
Yes, it was the first time I flew in an international plane. Yes, and it was quite exciting. The first leg of it was very exciting. I was brought to the airport with my brother George, my mom, my dad. Everybody was very happy.
Everybody was there at the airport.
Yeah, including a girlfriend that I was very fond of at that time. Everybody was just waiting for me to leave. So they'd be like, "Yeah, Innocent is gone." But yeah, it was a great time, there was so much hope. Everybody was, very, very happy, including myself. But it was a long trip at the end of it. We were in Heathrow for a short time. Then from Heathrow, we were going to Florida. And that was when I realized, whoa, man, this is a long trip. I got tired towards the end of it. But, when you're traveling and you're young and you don't care about anything. So we got to Florida.
What is going on in your head the first time you land in Orlando? Yeah,
the first time is like, damn, when are we reaching? But when we finally reached, I just wanted to make sure I get my bag. So that was an issue. But I got out of the airport and I'm walking. I had a hand luggage, but I do remember that when I left here, it was in July. July is traditionally very cold in this city, Nairobi. And the way I was dressed in a green suit, in a green sweater, military sweater.
There is a gap actually. When you finish, you were doing your education in Nairobi, so you were in Nairobi.
But I'd already graduated in Nairobi when this had happened. When I was going to college here in Kenya Polytechnic, I never had a job, but I was making money. I was making good money. I lived with my brother, Ochilo. But I worked.
Your blood brother?
Yes. Yeah. I worked as a model at that time, and I did a lot of advertisement for sure. Yeah. So there was a little bit of money coming my way at a very early age. Yeah.
All right. You landed in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I landed in the United States, and the biggest culture shock was just how hot and how humid it was. I'd never been to a humid place. I was in Eldoret and Migori, which are generally very temperate places. So panicking. As a matter of fact, I remember wanting to call my dad. And when I had a chance, I did ask him. He's the one who told me, you are in the southern hemisphere. It is humid this time of the year. And I was like, oh, okay. But that just tells you how unprepared I was. I did not even know what season it was when I was going. All I cared about was landing that place, and I was ready to show people dust. And that was the energy. Yes.
Okay. You told me about about sleeping outside for the your first night.
Yes. I went through the immigration very quickly and rather awkwardly. I saw two lines going, and I liked the line and where people were smiling and happy. That has always been how I look. When things are happy, that's where I go. So I went to this one line. I did not know the difference between the two. One of them, people were so somber and solemn. The other one, people looked so active, and it was like, wow. I said, this is where I belong. So I made a right, and I go. And long behold, this lady's asking me, hey, you're supposed to go there. But I couldn't even hear what she was saying, because I was just like, yes, I'm getting my passport. I can't hear what she's saying. She has an African-American accent. I have a thickest Kenyan accent you could get. I'm thinking I'm sounding like him, but...
Is it a Luo accent or it's Kalenjin?
It's Luo, straight up. You think you're sounding like an American.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't hear nothing you're saying.
Yes.
Nothing. So anyway, she just got frustrated. She's like, yeah, stamp, go. So she let me go. And I remember going to sit somewhere. And that's when I realized, first of all, I realized I was on the citizen line. But that was before September 11th. And the rules were a little bit maybe flexible for people. They had not made all these stringent changes. But for sure, the lines of the visitors was looking very sorry and sad. And when I went through and sat down, I was looking at people. And I think that's the first time that I realized, I think I'm in a bit of trouble here, because people are now being received. People are hugging. They go into cars. They disappear. It's about an hour to go. Then I realized nobody's coming for me. So at this time, I had now to figure out what I needed to do.
But you guys did not think about it on this other side, that how are you going to reach at the airport? Where are you going to go?
I kept lying to my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want anything that would make my parents say, no, you can't go. I just said, yeah, Dad, yes, there's somebody waiting for me. Oh, yeah, hotels, yeah. And sometimes when you say a lie, when you're young, when you say a lie sometimes too long, you may forget and actually start believing in it. And really, it didn't matter to me. As long as I was in America, that's all that mattered.
It's very interesting because these days they will ask you exactly where you were going to stay.
Yes, they would.
Correct?
They would.
Yeah, you reached the convention finally, and you start getting these stumbling blocks of, we can hire you, but where is this paper? Where is that paper?
This actually does not happen right away. I reached the convention, and everybody that met me literally was like, wow. Every single agency that I went to were like, wow, this is the guy we've been waiting for. Because I was a totally different person. A black man in America, you're very different from a black man from Africa. And at that time, I was every bit of a black man from Africa. If you think about Shaka Zulu type in that movie, you remember that type of guy? That's who I was. I was long, lean, and just different. So everybody was really interested in who I am. I was very open to share, and I was like, I'm here to really take this thing away from whoever. So at that time, I was doing very well. And I had about Ford Models, the biggest agency in the world for male models. There was Wilhelmina, there was Boss Models, there was Next Models, there was Abraham School of Artists. Those are really big agencies that anybody would be lucky to be mentioned. And they all called me back, and they were willing to work. So, of course, throughout the week, I'm making friends, and I make friends very quickly. After that, there was no need for me to get. Everybody was like, yeah, come stay with us, come stay with us. Everybody's listening to stories from Kenya. People, generally they.
So you stayed at the hotel in somebody's room?
I stayed at the hotel, in different hotels. I remember there was an African-American guy who just became like my brother. That day, we were going everywhere, and we were swimming, and it was such a beautiful time.
And you were sleeping in the same hotel with him?
The same hotel? Share hotels, I would be. There was just plenty now. Once I was in that hotel, everything was perfect. I didn't worry about food.
Eating?
There was food. They would just say, hey, let's go buy you food. It was just time. Everything was there. And I totally forgot. I remember there were people who would come when you were swimming. They're like, hey, man, do you want to do agencies for this? This is United Colors of Benetton. They are looking for a model just like you. Oh, don't sign with any agency. We'll sign with you. So it was exactly what I'd prepared for here. Those are the conversations I was hoping to see. So literally, every single thing that I'd prayed for was right in front of me. The only difference was I did not factor in the idea that you needed a work permit at that time. You needed to have Social Security. Because I was that young guy who you couldn't tell anything. I knew it all. I worked hard for it. I knew what I wanted.
But what I don't understand is even when they're giving you the visa here, you are going, the visa is to attend this convention.
Exactly.
And then what? Come back.
So the thing was, usually what would happen is you would attend a convention, and these agencies, if they liked you, they would take you to model houses. Okay? And these model houses is where they will accommodate you for months and months while they're sending you to different clients. And if a client books you, from that money is when they'll pay your board, room, and everything else. Yeah, but they would book you for good enough money. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, depending on what brand it is. So they knew there was money to be made. And when I went there, the one thing that made it a little harder was because I was coming outside of America. So I didn't have a Social Security, which was the basics, like an ID, literally. That was the most basic one.
It's the Social Security number is like the KRA PIN.
Yeah.
Or is it different?
It's tied to everything. It is much more impactful than the KRA. It holds your life. If you don't have it, you are persona non grata, pretty much.
Well, but the equivalent is the KRA PIN.
The KRA PIN comes very close to it, but not quite.
Because even these days in Kenya, you'll basically need KRA PIN for everything.
Yes. For major transactions. And it's
major transactions, if you're opening an account, you need the KRA PIN. Oduma number, you have the KRA PIN. You want this, the KRA PIN. There are so many things that they need the KRA PIN for right now.
Yeah, it's that way. With the Social Security number, either if you're born in the country, you are given it at birth. And then if you're an immigrant, then you would have to apply for it. You're vetted, and then you're given one. So you can imagine if kids were born with KRA PINs?
You see, now that makes it very different because Kenyans you given the KRA PIN at 18, I think.
Exactly. You're born with one. You're born in one is given to you. And if you are not born in the country, then you had to apply for it. And it took a few months to get it. And so in this case, they needed one to just even append you anywhere, to put you anywhere in this whole world.
No, all these gigs.
They had to figure out a way to put you somewhere. So very rarely would you get jobs unless you are absolutely exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So back then, you would have to have one to get this kind of job, and these were jobs that were very highly paying. Yeah. So I knew in my mind that once I got just one of them, then everything would be fine. And truly, that really was the case. The only thing is, if you didn't have a social, then they would have to apply it for you. So it was in between that process in July that they were looking to apply for me. And September 11th happens.
Really?
Yes. And when September 11th happens,
everything came to a standstill.
New York, everything came to a standstill. Not only did that,
you are still in Orlando.
No, at this time now I've moved to Illinois, Springfield. Now I had to, my brother, because now this whole fanfare of living with people and all this was done. Now I had to now come down to earth and face them.
Because everybody's going back home.
Everybody's going. I'm telling you, I won't lie to you. It's the first time I cried. Yeah, I looked and I was like, oh my God. All these friends that I met just disappeared. Hey, buddy, we see you. Good luck. And they're living in these nice cars. And their parents like me. Oh, my God. So where are you going to go? Oh, okay. I'm like, I'll be okay. You sure? You sure? Okay. Good luck. Hopefully we'll see you soon. That kind of conversation, man. And the last guy, when he left, his name was Justin Hogan. He left, and I was just like, wow. I looked around, and I'm seeing people closing the gate. Now I had to walk again with my bag. And right across, there was a 7-Eleven, a Motel 6.
What is a 7-Eleven?
No, a Motel 6. Motel 6 is a brand of very cheap hotels in America. And I'd seen one not too far away, down the street. So I just dragged my bag to
I can imagine you have not spent your money since you came here.
No, I had not spent my money.
Did you change it already?
All my money was in traveler's checks.
Traveler's checks?
Yeah. I don't know if people remember that, but back then, the main thing that how you carried your money was not cash. You used your traveler's checks to carry money. So traveler's check is kind of like, it's kind of like something that looks like a check. It almost looks like a dollar bill, but you had to sign it, put your ID, you give it to the bank people, and they would give you back money. They would bank it, literally, and it was money. It's no longer a thing. But that's how people travel.
It's no longer a thing.
Yes.
It's no longer a thing, but is it still there? Do you know if it's still...
I think some banks still can issue traveler's checks. In very rare circumstances they are. But yes, it was legal tender across banks, not anywhere else. Yeah, so I had a good leaflet of traveler's checks, maybe 3,000 worth of them.
3,000 Kenya shillings?
No, $3,000. Yeah. Like as I told you, I was working, and also my brother was pretty good at fundraising. He had really good friends that came. I had about 12 people fundraise for me, and they brought a lot of money. And also there were people in the industry who really believed in me. Kiko Romeo, the owner of Kiko Romeo, Annie McCrean, was one of the few people that really encouraged me to pursue this. And she gave me some good money towards it. I used to work with her over the weekends and things. So she really believed in me. And a few other people contributed to, so I had some money. 3,000, it's not a lot, but man.
$3,000 in 2001 is a lot of money, bro.
Yeah,
I believe that's an equivalent of $1 million today.
Yeah, I also had money at that time. I was working and I'd been paid a few commercials. I probably had about maybe $1,500 on my own at that time. So modeling at that time was paying, and people were compensated well. Models were treated much better than what I see here, and they were respected. Yeah.
So you go to this cheap motel.
I go to this cheap hotel, and man, the first thing is the smell of cigarette. I'm like, wow, that's when you know you're in a cheap hotel. It just smells cigarette. But I needed a place to put my bag down and just decompress a bit and figure out. So that's the day I called my brother Ochilo. I'm like, hey George, man, I think I'm in trouble. He's like, oh, what's going on? I said, I think I need a place to stay. He said, oh, okay. So he called a friend of his in Illinois, and this guy gives me a call and like, hey, how you doing? He's some Kalenjin guy, Mr. Malet, very helpful guy. I'm always thankful to him because he really helped ground me. So he invited me there, but I'm in Florida, And he is in Illinois. That is about 600 miles apart.
That is like here to Kisumu twice.
I'm telling you.
From Kisumu to Mombasa.
Yes. So, ideally you should travel by plane. But yeah, I was a Kenyan man, raised in a tough environment. I say, where's the next bus? And I jumped to the bus. But the interesting thing is this bus did not go directly. The bus was traveling from Orlando straight up the way, all the way to the west coast, then was turning up west, coming up back to the northern part of the country, east coast side. It was a Greyhound bus that would just go around the country. So because I didn't have a place to stay, I just got this ticket. They were selling a ticket for about $100, and you could go anywhere. Anytime you presented it for a month, you could go anywhere.
Really?
It was just a promotion, yeah. So you just jump in it and you'd go anywhere. So I literally dropped and stopped in every city every now and then, maybe a day or two, get a cheap hotel and look around and then go back until I got to Illinois. It took me about 3 days. Yeah. So that is my story. So
it's an amazing story, but
it is.
So you got to Mr. You said it's called Mr. Malit.
Yes, Mr.
Malit.
Yes, some guy I think from Kerio Valley or something like that. He was a very nice guy, very polite, very calm, But he always looked at me like I had 4 eyes because I was just this idealistic kid who was thinking about these very lofty ideas, just like you're saying. I always thought about being an actor, and everybody that asked me, I told them I'm an actor. And Kenyans there would look at you like, what do you mean? But I just didn't know why. But it's the history and things they went through that made them really question, why did I think I was one, or why I even entertained the idea that I would be one. But in my mind, I was like, yeah.
So 9/11 happens.
9/11 happens. 9/11 happens. Every contact that you knew has gone dead. The ability of you to work in that country, now in that particular status, has absolutely been changed within the first 90 days, 30 days. They've reversed everything. They've even changed the name of the organization that was taking, it used to be INS. It changed to Homeland Security. Everything has changed. The ball game has changed. You cannot work without nothing. You are not even supposed to be seen. Americans are very inward looking at that time. They've been attacked. It's the drums of war. They are preparing for Iraq. They're preparing for Afghanistan. That's the energy. Yeah. So at this time, it didn't matter who you are or how good you are. If you didn't have papers, it was an absolutely no. So all those contacts that I had just disappeared with Osama bin Laden. The guy got me. He got me, man.
That's interesting how a national calamity can affect a very innocent person.
Yes. Absolutely. It affected every single thing that I'd worked for a very short time. I'd worked very hard for this. Not only did I work, I prayed very hard for it. People just didn't know, but every single day I prayed 5 times a day so that this thing could work through. I worked out, I ate right, I drank water, I did every single thing. I walked the part, looked the part. But when that day came, Osama and his boys got us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then things would just go dark. For how long?
At that time you couldn't do anything. So I petitioned the immigration department at that time. They were called the INS at that time.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, I need to extend my stay. I need to go do some photography tests with different photographers. And I also need to go to GOSIs. GOSIs are the things that models would go to different companies and they would see if they're actually good enough for the work or if they're a good match for this company. So they extended my stay for another 6 months.
They did. They did.
Yeah, they did.
Which is good. Your luck your luck doesn't leave you, man.
No, I've always been a lucky man, and I pray that stays that way.
Yeah.
If anybody's watching, keep praying for me. Yeah. So that time I have 6 months, and within these 6 months, I now go and live with Malit. And these were probably the most painful 6 months of my life because I was somebody who was used to having access to the gym 2 times a day. I I had a very active social life in Nairobi. In a sense, I had a good community of young friends. We were in school. I had a brother who was doing pretty good in other things. So life changed. And I was in the middle of Illinois, Springfield, which is a very small town. Actually, Springfield is the capital city of Illinois. But it's literally a small city in the middle of a cornfield. It's nothing but farmers. Yeah, it was a very depressing time of my life. And this time, my chances are slipping in my hand every day.
Do you think you sounded like you're in Migori?
This time, I still sounded like I'm in Migori.
Because the cornfields is like Migori.
Yeah.
The weather is like Migori.
The weather, it's cold, it's nice, but this time now is towards...
What is Mr. Malit doing himself? Does he have a family?
He was actually an occupational therapist. I think so. He worked in the medical field. But he was a very quiet person. He would just go to work and come, and he would be in his room all the time. Only he said, hey, kuna chakula hapo, kuna nyama. That's all he said. He was a very quiet guy. So it was quite a lonely experience. And I think for him to have this young, brash guy who was moving about like he owned the half of the world, it was tough to just see that. And everybody that told me to find work, I said, no, I'm not here to be a laborer. That was my energy. I wanted to be an actor. I didn't want to work and be this. So it
just
took
a
me
minute.
a long time.
Where is he living? Is he living close to the city itself, or inside the city, or outside the
He
city?
lived just a bit outside, kind of like on the suburban part, but it was a very rural setting generally, and even people of Illinois, they are very modest, blue-collared people. So at that time, even socialization, I was from Nairobi. Now I'd lived in Nairobi for a long time. I'm used to, active life. You know how Nairobi is for a young person.
Yeah.
These parties, there are all these good things, and being in that circle where I was, there was a lot of things to do for a young man. Life was interesting, and it was paying. It was worth it. So coming all the way high down to this place where now you just see numbers of cattle walking by, and you day in, day out, you are locked in the house, or you're in the house, you can't be productive, you can't work, was very, very hard for me. And I think that's maybe the first time that I might have come through what is close to depression, because my career was no longer at my mind. I was not progressing in that sense. Everything was shut down. There was nothing you could hear as far as work. America was closed for anybody. And most importantly...
I think they stopped people coming into America?
For a good while, yes. For a good while. Especially visas for visitors visa, yes. They had to reorganize themselves. And so a lot of things were happening at that time. And I had my dreams in my hands, literally cradling them every day, hoping somebody would call. And nothing came through. And all those leads just disappeared. And by the time America was opening up, maybe a year later, nobody could remember who you are. It was time for them to move on, but you still didn't have a social. So every time you went, somebody would be like, great, we really like this, but do you have a social security?
These guys were supposed to apply for you. Did you have their number?
Yeah, the people needed to apply for you. There's the visas for actors is called a P visa.
A PU?
P visa.
A P visa.
P visa is for actors and athletes. So that's where I was. So there was a small modeling agency in New York that I went to visit, and they applied it for me. They applied for a P visa, but it took so long for it to come. But without that, there was nothing. It took almost a year before you could even hear anything from the immigration. And at this time, you don't have a gym. You're no longer in the same mind frame. Or even physically, you are changing now. The food is different. Everything is different. So it's at this time that I started to realize.
Malit was just you and Malit?
Yeah, Malit was very gracious. He stayed with me for a very long time. And I'd like to really thank the gentleman, because he gave me everything I needed, like a child, literally every day. That does not happen with most Kenyans. You go to someone's there, you stay with somebody for a week, and like, my friend, get out.
Yeah.
But he was very gracious, and he took really good care of me until the time I say, sir, I have to move somewhere else. Because where he was and the type of person he was a very straightforward person. I needed to find people who are crafty at this time of my life.
People who are quicker.
crafty
and quick
and willing to take some steps. So when I called one of my friends, my brother's friends,
it is so that's those things that we are talking about. If you are Kenyan, you understand it so fast.
Yes. It was time was of the essence.
Yeah.
Mr. Lucky had run out of luck.
Yeah.
For once in life. And it was time now to create other lucks. And a friend, my brother's friend, Tony Onyango, very, very good friend up to now, said, Omera, what are you doing there? It's you, Bukanyo Bikoni. Literally, get
come
out there.
Life is.
Yeah, come out here. What are you doing in the middle of the cornfield there?
Yeah.
So I thanked my guy and I said, thank you. I grabbed my bag and left. And I went to, that's how I ended up in Maryland.
Your P1 visa has not come out.
Has not come out, but I keep extending my.
And they are gracious enough to extend it for you.
Yes, as long as you had documents backing you, they did extend it. Yes.
What documents would you be having that would extend it?
Places that showed, letters that showed that I was going to see different model houses and different acting agencies.
So you'd seek these letters?
I did. I would go. I was really looking for work, even though I didn't have every permit. I didn't have the necessary document, but I still wanted to be in front of people and be within the industry. So yeah.
Isn't that something that a lot of us should learn from? That a lot of people, even people who are missing jobs, they just decide to be in the house, not doing anything, not going out to meet anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you have to keep hope alive.
Yeah.
It's very, very important, especially for a young person. You don't know where your luck will come from. And in my case, every single day I spoke with people and I spoke with them passionately about what I wanted, but they could see the passion. But legally, everything was locked. It was an impasse. But when I came to Maryland, now I found they were cool. The people who also know how to deal with small fate and bad fate.
Yeah.
So without saying much, I started finding my way around, finding my feet, and long behold, I was a regular person, just like everybody else. Yes.
Yeah. Did it come the P visa?
The P visa was approved, but what I did immediately, I intercepted it with a different type of visa.
Yes. Really?
Yes. You had to be fast, and the immigration goes with time, but you have to think faster than the people who are giving you this. Let's say if they give you a P visa for a year, but I wanted something longer because I realized now that I was no longer in the game of I wanted something a little bit more permanent. Yeah, so at that time, luckily enough, I'd met somebody who really helped me move forward from where I was. Yeah, and it wasn't long. I had applied for a different visa.
And this one, and they didn't ask you now that you're applying for this other visa.
So this was about a year in, and I found a job somewhere under the table, and a certain lady came there, and she had a conversation with me about what it is I was doing. I was actually selling African artifacts, art, and things like this.
Yeah.
And she asked me, how come you know so much about these things? I said, well, most of these things are in my background. Most of them are soapstones, so I could explain where the Kamba people from, or if it's Kissy stone, things like that. I was working in a shop that some Cameroonian family owned, but they had a lot of Kenyan stuff. So it was easy for me to explain the origin of things, But this lady came the second time. She asked me, you seem to know a lot about this, and I don't think you're the kind of person who should be working here. I was like, well, yeah, this is where I work. I remember it was on a Thursday. Then she asked me for a date. She said, hey, would you like to go to a date? And at that time, I was actually talking to somebody, and I said, I don't think so. So she came.
What sort of date is it for looking at stones? She liked you.
She thought I was interesting. Maybe it was what I was talking about, or how I sounded, or how I looked, whatever it was. She felt like she needed to just have a conversation. But she was very keen. She noticed that my interaction was definitely maybe of higher caliber or level than what I was trying to be. At that time, for you to pass yourself to work on those underground jobs, you had to just be almost like a fool. Somebody would send you for something, you just run and say, here, that was the kind. But I think in our interaction with her, she realized this guy has a lot more in depth, but he's not opening up. So she wanted to figure out what it was. And to be honest, I think she liked a black man. So, yeah. So from there on, we started talking regularly. And there was somebody I was dating at that time. And I told this person, look here, I don't think this relationship is going anywhere, because this person was very serious now. After about a week, it was very clear. Anyway, to cut the story short, she got to know my friend Tony. And she told Tony, look here, I really like Innocent. I like a lot of things about him. But I think where things are now, he can't move forward. He likes the idea. I think he should be going to school, blah, 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 And Tony came to me and said, Omera, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. So Tony sat me down and made me see
Tony
the set. Yeah. Tony Onyango, Jakano, very nice guy.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite people. Yes. He sat me down and said, boss, you need to, this is a blessing. Nobody wants to change your life more than this person. Yeah. So the girl was like, hey, I like you, you like me. Let's just live together. And I was like, okay. She's a very beautiful girl too. So
American?
Yeah, American. Yeah,
like white American?
Yeah, she was a white Caucasian American. She was a doctor at that time. She was about my age. I think she was born in 77. I was born in 78. So just about the same age.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at that time, I'd not thought about being too serious. So we started living together, seeing each other, be in a house in the weekend and things like that. Then one time she just said, hey, there's something you're not telling me. And I was like, what? She asked me, what about your immigration? I said, my immigration is fine, I'm fine. She went back to Tony.
Yeah.
And I think Tony called me on the side and said, my man, you're going to sign these papers.
Which papers?
She was like, for us to move forward, we have to move forward as a family. Yeah. And she signed the papers. And
what papers?
Marriage papers.
Ah, yes. I see. Oh, I see. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so
but what is the law saying? Are you supposed to just come and marry somebody with your papers not in order?
No, you can marry anyone you want. You can marry anyone. Now,
whichever your situation with immigration.
Yeah, and at that time, really, my goal was not to marry anyone, but she felt like for us to move on together, we needed to just get married and move on together.
Because the married paper would open other doors.
Because now we were working. I was working so much. I had to work 3 or 4 jobs. I didn't have enough time with her. These people believe in quality time. You're not going to work 10 jobs, come back here, you're so tired, and she wants you to go see her friends here and there.
Yeah.
So I don't know, she'd figured out what my problem was. I really had no idea. But she had a friend called Sarah who had married some guy from Jamaica. And Sarah just looked and said, this guy probably has not the right papers. Maybe he's legally here, but he doesn't have the papers to allow to work, which was my case. And she went, got the papers from the lawyer, and the next thing I'm sitting here, Tony has told me, Omera, do what you need to do. And lo and behold, that was it. And my papers became regular. So from there on, I just went to school, and then life began.
Gigi Bonadwani, we need to understand these things properly. There are so many questions happening from this thing.
Yes.
For example, let's theoretically say that you've got a P visa,
yes,
the one for modeling.
Yes.
You're in the States and you've been told that you can be here for the next 1 year.
Yes.
You get an American woman, you get married legally. How does this marriage affect your stay in the United States?
So your marriage generally, at least in that time, was when you're married to somebody, this person was petitioning to be kind of your benefactor, in a sense. You know? So this type of visa that came from a marriage was one that trumps all the others. So it had every single perks, I guess, that you'd have, so that even a P visa at that time, because a P visa had to be renewed so many times, I was legal within the framework of a P visa. But when you got married, you didn't have to worry about all this. And P visa restricted you to only working within a particular yes,
within the P,
yes,
the P industry.
Yes, and she wanted me to continue doing my acting and modeling, but also go to school, which is also what I wanted. So having been married, we got married. We were able to now get travel documents. I brought her here in Kenya. We had a wedding here. I know a lot of people don't know that.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. I was once married, lovely, man. So, yeah, had a wedding and the whole village celebrated. It was a big party. And we stayed for a long time, but after about 5 years, we divorced. Yeah. But she's the person that helped me in terms of getting regular. It's not something I even thought about.
And if you get a divorce, then everything changes then, or it remains?
Yeah, everything was going to change, but my situation with her became unattainable. And to me, I thought it was getting dangerous in many ways. So I just decided to get her out of the situation, even before I got my stay there. So I came back and repetitioned my papers myself once I removed her as my sponsor, because the marriage was not working anymore. And she was a strong-head person. I'm a strong-head person. I just said, you know one thing, if you think this is why I'm here, I'm sorry. So I went, found a lawyer, petitioned her out of the case, removed her completely out of the case, and I petitioned it myself. Yeah, and I got my green card from there. So I didn't get my green card from the marriage, but I got it as a result of having been married at some point. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So at this point now, we can call you an American. You've been here, you've known it, you've seen it. You went to school. What did you do in school?
I did pre-law and political science. Yes, yeah, that's what I did.
And then how did you cross into real estate?
Real estate has always been my passion. The love of selling things has always been with me. But I wanted to sell bigger things. And the biggest thing I could find that I could sell are homes or airplanes. Airplanes would need you to have more clientele, but homes are things that people use every day. So it just fell naturally into my path. But before that, I was in fitness industry for a long time. I worked as a fitness manager in a big chain in America called Bali Total Fitness. And I think that's where I honed my person-to-person sales experience. Yeah, then
because you'd be speaking with everybody.
Yeah, and I loved people. I'm a people person. Yeah, I love seeing people, and that experience in Illinois almost killed me. Seeing cows every day. So it was good to be in front of people every day. Again, I was back in the fitness industry, which I loved working out and loved seeing people. So it just progressed, and after a while I wanted to make a little bit more money, and I said I need to get into real estate. Yeah.
When did you get into real estate?
I got into real estate in 2015, started studying it. But I didn't take my classes seriously until I was 2017. So 2018, I started while I was now a realtor, a greenhorn for that matter. Yeah.
How is it like being how does it work? So how do you begin selling homes? You register, you organize your company with certain people. How does it work?
That's a good question. Real estate in America, the way it works is a realtor is generally the contact person that finds a property for a client, be it selling or buying. But a realtor has to be anchored by what is called an agency. So an agency would be someone who has been in the real estate field for a long time, and he has an office and a space where he has different realtors working under them. Their job is to make sure that they enforce, or rather make sure that the rules of real estate are followed from the Real Estate Commission. It's thousands and thousands of things to look for. So it's from that agency that you work as a realtor. So you could not be a realtor without an agency. So we are working under brokers.
Okay, agreed. What is the biggest difference between living in the United States? I mean, everybody wanted to go away from Africa.
Yeah.
Even if you go to Wanderlust Diaries, there is so many questions about people actually want to run away from their country, be it Zambia, be it Uganda, be it Kenya. For me, I've always thought that a lot of people do not know how the world works today. And I think 2001, 1980s, when some of our uncles went to the United States, it was completely different. People have always asked me, Jagero, you've always gone to Europe and you've never even talked about staying there. And I always tell people that I really, really enjoy traveling around Europe, but I don't think I can stay in Europe because one of the things I've seen in Europe is the lack of organic lifestyle, where everybody's hopping on a train, going to job, hopping back on the train, eating a burger during lunchtime, and then that's it.
Yeah.
You know, a very sort of very robotic life.
Yeah.
But some people are still saying, oh, well, I still want to leave this country and go to the United States. What would you tell somebody who is so much hell-bent on going out, let's say specifically to the United States right now? What are some of the things that they would expect that was different from 1980, different from the year 2000?
Yeah. So just to start from your question, I think the difference between these societies is that most of us in Africa, we are probably haven't realized that we need to live. Most of us are surviving. We're actually surviving life. When you're surviving life, you're always trying to have one foot in front of another. The people who have really realized that actually you can slow pace here and be able to live a life, those are the people who can actually go to Europe, like you, and come back. Because there's actually life to live. They're not surviving necessarily. But survival here has made it almost like a hand-to-mouth type of thing, where you're always worrying about where your meal will come. That is a very big motivating factor for anybody. I think if we are able to provide these things in a relative easy way, we'd see less people wanting to go outside this country. There's a big difference between these two places, the Western world and the African world. It's very, very transactional out there. Even saying hello is a hard thing for people. There are people who can come in the office and not say hello to you all day, do their work and left. And life is very, very different. It's very bleak in some places, but you can make a lot of money because everything is very transactional. You know, I always say we forget that the life we live here is actually an imitation of what the European people want. They came up here, find our own life going on, they wiped it clean, and then they installed their own software. And now we are trying to run through that software. We are always trying to do what they are doing better than them. And that's why we are in a survival mode. You know, we are running on someone else's system. This was not our system. We're just trying to learn it best. We had barely 60 years. They were here less than 100. We didn't learn their way, which the European way, they've lived there for thousands of years. They've mastered it. That's why they're so good at it. But up here, we're just trying to do an imitation of what somebody was teaching us in class for a short time, their language, how they dress, all these jackets. These were not our things. So the world is upside down without us knowing, for us as Africans. So it takes very few of us to really figure out that, look here, there's actually a life here for us. If you can figure out the African way of life, this is where life is. And I can tell you that if you can make just enough to provide for your basic needs and maybe a little bit more and do things you like, there's nowhere better. Nowhere is better. Yeah. These places are farming in many ways. Yeah. So
there's a question that I would love to ask you about going to America. There is now what they call in the United States ICE.
ICE.
Yeah. You know, the dreaded organization that can decide to kick you out of America even after 50 years. There are a lot of Africans that think that they can slip into the United States using any other visa. You know, they can claim that they're going for a business trip. They can say that they're going for sports, and then they get stuck there and then go underground.
Yeah.
What would you say to such kind of persons? There's somebody who is having that idea of going and sleeping underground and trying to...
America is a place of structure. There's lots of structures for you to do things. If you find yourself in such a place, you're in serious problems. Life is not going to be as easy as you think. You're going to be an alias. That means you're going to use someone's documents to work. if you are found, there's serious consequences to that. There's jail time. There's all kinds of things. And then generally, America is also a place that has very little people relate with their peers based on what work you do and this and that. So it's a very lonely life. But I think, as I'd said earlier, this type of migration is very survivalist. So I don't think it would be hard for somebody to still see an opportunity where nobody else can see. But I would absolutely discourage it. I think if you go to America, you should really, or abroad or anywhere, you should really try to have structures, have plans, have goals, and return dates. And if you don't want to return, you got to have a plan for that too. Because at some point, it ends up that we are the ones to bring you back. You got to make, So to answer your question, I'm not a big fan of people being undocumented, because I think your best qualities are not recognized when you can't really portray yourself the best way. So I say don't.
What are some of the things that you can't do if you're not documented properly in the United States right now?
What are some of the things? You may not get a driver's license. When you don't have a driver's license, it means you have to literally hitchhike or use Ubers or trains to go to work. It just means you cannot be able to move from point A to point B. You may not even qualify for some jobs. Majority of them want to know that you can move from point A to point B. Maybe it's getting a little easier now. People can work from homes in terms of the documentation. But you can't get healthcare. If you're sick, you're sick. You cannot get education. You can't advance yourself. You can't get accommodation. You need a place to stay. You have to live with people. It's a lot. It's a lot. And if you're arrested, your case could be a lot more different. It also means that you don't have the same rights as any other person. You know, an American has a right within a certain amount of time to be presented in a court of law and be accused for whatever. And he can defend himself for a right for counsel. If you don't have those, if you're not an American or you're undocumented, you don't have a right for those. They may be given to you, but just because, but it's not a right anymore. It's a privilege that can be yanked out of. So it's not a life you want. I know a lot of people want to come, but I personally am coming back home. So maybe I'm the wrong person to ask this, because I've been there longer than I've lived in this country. And I think it's time now I'm pivoting and I'm trying to get back home. So maybe my mind and my heart is fully here than it's ever been in the last 20 years. Yeah.
All right, man. It was really, really, really nice talking to you. Answered all my questions. We had a very good chat about going to America.
Yes.
It's a beautiful story.
Yes.
So thank you very much. Let me turn to the people of the internet. I don't know whether this camera is working. This camera is working. All right, people of the internet, that is Innocent Omondi. Other two names I've forgotten already.
Innocent Bogo Omondi. And people can also call me Innocent.
Innocent, yes.
Yes.
So thank you very much for tuning into this episode with Innocent Omondi. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment, leave a question. We are also in all the socials, TikTok, Instagram, X, Facebook. Please follow us there. Until another episode, bye for now.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right.